Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and listening. We have another global intel update for July 7, 2017, or another 777. And that number is showing up now just about everywhere. Anyway, hi, Larry. How are you doing?
Hello, Stuart. Thanks for having me. Yeah, you're right. Those sevens are really coming out.
Yeah, I know. And, well, of course, the Lord is the mathematician of mathematicians, so the occult tries to duplicate him, kind of like 9/11. There were so many numbers involved in that 9/11 Twin Tower takedown, and no way could humanity have done that. Satan could, and the Lord obviously allowed it. So, people should really start paying more attention to the numbers game, because the occult always signs everything with a number, and that's how you can tell who did it. It's kind of a whodunit deal. Anyway, you said there was something about a rumor going around that there was an attempt on Ivanka Trump?
I don't really have any real details. It seems Alan West's website and a couple of other websites asking for prayer for Ivanka Trump said there had been a possible assassination attempt against her, and the Secret Service stopped the guy who was armed with knives. So that's all I have. I can't really substantiate it totally. It's just a report, a rumor, and but there is a lot of intrigue going on with the Trump family, and real concerns over in Germany of Melania also. You know, she got trapped more or less in her hotel by the protest crowds and the violence there, and so they had to. She finally made it over to the G20 today.
Well, of course, I'm not sure exactly what's going on. I'm very, very suspicious of the whole thing. Again, I ask people to read Psalm 2, because nobody's exempt in Psalm 2. The rich men, the rulers of the earth, the kings and the rulers, the international corporations, blah, 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 all tied together in this whole thing. And it's kind of like a script, but it doesn't look like a script. It's a big stage play, but it doesn't look like a stage play. It just kind of happens. But you have to back away, I guess, from all of this. There was a notice on Steve Quayle's site. It says, Brother Steve, on the local news just now in Hawaii, they talked about if a missile attack happens here, we might have maybe 10 to 15 minutes warning to find shelter or shelter in place. They said there are no underground shelters for the public. They said we would need to stay sheltered for 14 days, and we need food and water for 14 days. They have never said this before, ever on the news. It's so close. Steve Quayle replies, once again, the Pacific Missile Theater Range, communications, control, and command will be the number one target, along with Guam. Repent, pray, and believe that God delivers and warns his people, and that all the unbelievers will see how late in the game it truly is. I recommend who is starting to finally see the need to pre-op as best you can. Get Holly Deo's Dare to Prepare as fast as you can, and I would amen to that one. That is one of the best books out there, is Holly's Dare to Prepare. What do you think about this, Larry? Going along with this would be the kind of FEMA activity that people are kind of whispering about, and it's all about, I guess, an EMP and communications when something like that occurs. What's your take on this whole thing?
Well, I think that, of course, that article, included Hawaii as well as Japan, because Japan wouldn't have long either to prepare, and Japan already is drilling their people to go underground and shelter where they can and giving them direction. So there are people around the region, Pacific region, that is really concerned that North Korea is going to fire something. And by the way, I don't know if you heard it, but they're reporting that they're about to test the THAAD missile systems in Alaska. But the only thing is, Stuart, and I'd like your opinion on this, I was listening to some experts today who said that the THAAD really is not constructed to bring down an ICBM. Now, they are good with short-range and intermediate-range missiles, but an ICBM, you know, it goes into space and turns and comes back in at a different trajectory, and they say they're very difficult to hit. That's why they're so concerned with Russia's missiles.
Yeah, you'd almost have to hit that way out there when it's making its curve to come back in, because otherwise you probably would never be able to do it. And of course, if China is supplying Kim with all these little firecrackers of his, who knows how actually advanced they really are. I don't think we do know. Remember, I read an article on Wednesday where an insider claimed, he worked for the FBI and the other intel groups, that they already had intercontinental ballistic missiles. North Korea could hit any place in the United States. And, of course, people do forget about their subs. And their subs were spotted, weren't they, off the West Coast out in international waters? Or at least they were looking for them out there. And
there were reports. There were reports. They thought it had been spotted off the West Coast. And also there was concerns about possible North Korean subs being off the East Coast, you know, up close to Canada at one time. Now, also, you know, right after, and it's ironic because right after Soccer Fall began to talk about North Korean sub being off, or possibly Chinese being off the West Coast, they began to have drills. They called them drills. They were using their anti-submarine, weapons out there trying to locate something. And then later we fired a missile off the West Coast, or once or twice. You remember that?
Yes, I remember that. So there's something going on, because here's Mattis says, North Korea missile launch doesn't bring us closer, or U.S. closer to war. And he appears to be backing off from the strong rhetoric, as well as Donald Trump. Well, we're going to try all different kinds of means to get this done. Economic sanctions, diplomatic sanctions. We'd like to meet with Kim and see if we can iron this out. And it seems like he's playing the game he's always played, which is shakedown operation. But we don't have much choice, do we? I mean, sooner or later, we're going to get hit. I mean, the Bible says that we are surrounded, basically, by enemies. Mighty Babylon the Great goes crashing down in 1 hour of time. So,
well, that's the concern, is the fact that we don't have many options. We would have to preempt a launch. That would be the only way other than trying to defend from a launch, and that's not always accurate. So, are they trying to back down from the rhetoric of a preemptive strike on North Korea? So, it's getting very, very dangerous at this moment in time.
Yeah, he says here, North Korea's launch of a missile capable of striking parts of the United States does not bring the two nations closer to war, Defense Secretary James Mattis said July 6. Even as the President, Trump, warned he was considering pretty severe things in response. Quote, I do not believe this capability in itself brings us closer to war, Mattis told reporters. He added, U.S. self-restraint had prevented conflict and that diplomatic efforts remain underway. His comments appeared to be aimed at clarifying that the U.S. was not considering any military action in response to the missile launch. So, where are we? I mean, if you were going to hit somebody, you would certainly, if you had any brains at all, be de-escalating the conflict, trying to get cozy, and then bang, you hit them between the eyes. Would that
I think you're right
scenario
on that,
seem right? I think we're going to be in for a surprise. I think we're just going to wake up one morning and the war is on. Whether Kim himself did it because we did cyber attacks or we put too much squeeze on him, and he said, what have I got to lose? I mean, if they did pretty severe economic restraints on him through Chinese banks and whatnot to deal with him, which they've already begun, that's kind of an act of war against the nation, isn't it?
Well, what's interesting is trying to deal with the mind of Kim Jong-un, and that is very difficult because, and the reason for that is, during the 8 years of Clinton, the 8 years of Bush, the 8 years of Obama, he never had a problem. North Korea basically so-called raised hell, and then they were rewarded every single time. So what is he used to seeing? The U.S. threaten him and then reward him, and he's just now waiting on his reward.
Yeah, and it appears like maybe there was a comment made, I don't know if it was Trump or Mattis, saying something like, we'd like to meet with Kim and negotiate. Well, they've tried that before, and it never worked. So is there going to be an end to this thing, or is this do we do something that irritates Kim to the point whereas the what's his name, Dr. Doom, Major Ed Dames and his remote viewing team, that Kim will use a nuke in anger. Now, it's kind of an interesting remark because he can use it either underground or maybe he hits Hawaii or something like that. What do you think?
Well,
there's a lot of information out there that this is a beginning of a whole process that we would call probably World War III.
Well, Obama's 8 years really drew out North Korea really on the ICBMs and the nuclear weaponry, and also it drew out Iran and their capabilities. And, of course, we know that North Korea and Iran are joined at the hip in the nuclear capability of striking what they call their enemies, which is us. And ironically, when you look at it that way, we've got real problems because we have Obama undermining everything Trump is doing. Trump just had the few days meetings with the new president, I guess, of South Korea, Moon, who did not want any confrontation with the North. He wanted to make deals. He wanted to make they even found that he was trying to set up a deal with Kim to pay off like a ransom to have peace. And so just as soon as that meeting with Trump was over, Obama rushes to South Korea to visit with him. So you've got the undermining of the New World Order, who I believe has really set up North Korea to be the first domino in the Armageddon script. And that's where we're headed. And can we get around that? Can we stall that? Can we delay that? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it all depends on what the Lord has in mind when it comes right down to it, because he has the nations approximately where he wants them before the final battles begin to unfold. So, but I am a little bit concerned because even the bots, I think, early on mentioned North Korea as kind of a volatile point. Then you had Dr. Doom. They're going to use a nuke in anger. Now we have this escalation of verbiage and then backing off. So, but as far as I know, Kim is still going ahead, right? He's going to fire more missiles, from what I understand.
That seems to be the intelligence, is that he's preparing to fire more missiles, do more tests, and also has been working at a test site for a nuke. And at the same time, you can add in the Torah codes, which indicate Korean blood and Korean fire and, rhetoric such as that to indicate possible use of nukes on the Korean Peninsula. So, everything seems to be pointing to a situation there, which, like you said, may be the first domino, and that may be exactly right. What I did hear today, though, very interesting, and I shared that with you, I think. They indicated that actually going after Kim would really draw Iran out, and Iran would move in all directions if any attack or threat came against the North Koreans. So that reminded me so much of what you call Daniel 8 and how something draws Iran out to war.
Yeah, and it's a Blitzkrieg attack. And if there was an Israeli rabbi, I believe, who did an extensive research on Daniel 8, and it is definitely a latter-day prophecy, and we're in the latter days. And he came to the conclusion that it was Babylon the Great, or the United States, that pounded Iran virtually into the ground as punishment. Well, that's kind of like Trump. He's a fighter, and nobody's figured that one out yet, I guess. Here's a headline. I want your comments on this. New deep state strategy. Deny President Trump secured secrets. So they're going to deny him the intelligence he needs to run that. That's treason.
Well, not
really?
Only treason. Yeah, we've got treason operating. We've had it since his election began, and his inauguration. We've had nothing but treason on a daily basis. We're having sedition all over the country and around the world against him, which seems there's no one held responsible. You've got Obama and all of his embeds. You can take it any way you want to. All over the world, subverting everything he's doing. And there was a report came out, I believe, yesterday or today that leaks from the intel agencies are at an all-time high, even putting attacking Trump or getting rid of Trump out of office ahead of national security and the safety of the United States. So there you are, deep state, I believe, because of, you've got all the people that were before Trump that are either establishment or from the Clintons and the Bushes and the Obamas, all of those people that are there to bring him down. And they care more about bringing Trump down than they care about the safety of this entire nation of people. And the people still sit on the couch and apparently are not aware of that fact.
Well, either they're not aware or they don't care. They're eating too many brats, drinking too many beers, and having a good time. And we know from prophecy that when America's taken out, it's a big surprise. Nobody would have believed it, except you got mushroom clouds rising. In fact, a friend of mine had a dream. He said it was so vivid, and he didn't say it was from the Lord, but he was working on an automobile. He's a mechanic, and he looked up and he saw these mushroom clouds from various locations. So that's going to be what it's like. It's going to be business as usual, and there will be no warning whatever. The Bible indicates there is no warning whatever. It comes as a total surprise. And I think it names who our enemies are. You go into Ezekiel 38:39, and I think you can find who the enemies are right there. Gog, Magog, and a collection of nations from all around the world gather against us and put us down. And I think you can see that starting to form anyway. Now, whether Trump can do anything to slow that down, I have no clue. It's possible. Hopefully it's possible. But I think Trump is here for judgment, not a reprieve. I don't see any action on Trump's part to shut down FEMA camps, disable a lot of what FEMA is up to, the deep state, Homeland Security, NDAA laws that they can go out and arrest anyone anytime and they choose, all really in a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, but they're too dumb to know it. They're too apostate to know that they've not only tied a rope around their necks, it's pretty well knotted by this time, and I think the Lord's busy sawing off some of the legs of the chair they're on, so that's the way it's going to work. It's just going to be bang, and it's over. That bothers me more than anything is this nonchalant attitude of the American people. They're about to ready to lose not only their nation, but their children and their freedom. And I don't see any slowdown of surveillance. Do you? In fact, I think it's increasing.
There's not any slowdown, and I listened to a few experts out there the last few days talking about since Trump's been in office and how he has the capability of shutting down any of the agencies he wants to. He just signs them out of existence, basically, and they're not there anymore. And they said they're astonished that he hasn't took a hand in cutting off some of these agencies, but he hasn't. Just like you said, I was reminded, though, as you were talking about that friend of mine named Bill that sent me, remember, I think I copied you, war everywhere. Yes. He actually had a dream, and he said everywhere he looked, war. He said war everywhere. And I think you're right. I think, and speaking of war, by the way, I don't know if you followed Germany and the protesters, but this is a war. These protesters are not there to protest. They brought war. And they're very concerned, Stuart, that I guess after tomorrow, Saturday's part of the G20, that they say a number of these protesters' faces appear to be faces of those that have been protesters in the streets of America, and they're really concerned about them coming back over here to America, the same protesters, and then setting the streets on fire this summer in America.
Well, they're funded by George Soros and the Obama deep state operations. We're under a communist coup, and they have fulfilled. There's 45 points that the communists wanted to fulfill to topple a nation, and all but 3 of them, and most of those 3 are actually in operation right now, but they haven't been concluded yet. Everything else has been. So, yeah, I think we are. They can talk freedom all they want. They can talk America will be great again all they want. That does not coincide with prophecy. Unless this is the rise of Antichrist, wherever he comes out of, whoever he is, that we're going to go into kind of a fake peace and safety, peace and security operation, and then boom, the whole thing comes apart. Kind of like the dying breath of a person, where they and even a rally. I'm sure you've heard about that. People will rally, and it looks like they're recovering from whatever it is they had, and then all of a sudden they just die. Boom. And it almost is like that's what's happening here. We're in a rally, but it's a death rally just before the end. And I know people don't like to hear doom and gloom, but humanity is a fallen creature. And Jesus Christ came down here behind enemy lines to effect a rescue. And if they're going to poo-poo that, I can understand the Lord lowering the boom without any mercy at all. Boom, it's over. And I did have that dream where I was told it was over. it was done, and that was, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that it was done. And didn't matter what they did, didn't matter what the American people did, didn't matter what the government did, it was done and over with. That America had been found in the balance of scales wanting, just like old ancient Babylon. And it's just taken a little bit longer because of the Lord's mercy to not bring about this final beheading of the United States, which is really what it is. We're going to get our head chopped off. The hammer of the whole earth suddenly is not the hammer of the whole earth. And when you really look around at what we're doing, aren't we not the hammer of the whole earth? Somebody does something we don't like, we just pound them up until they comply. So I think we're very, very close. Hate to say that, but that's just what I believe. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. We've been the hammer and used by different presidents for many, many years now, actually. And I wanted to run something by you and get your opinion. I'm not trying to paint another sign in the sky, but hey, there was a report on Drudge Report, and I checked out the source from the UK, and it seems legitimate. It says massive meteor strikes the moon with the power of 10 missiles. And then I saw some of the images, and it looked like a massive meteor strike on the moon. And now, isn't it interesting, we're talking about an eclipse later on, we're talking about 9/23, but before both of those, we have the moon struck by a meteor that was observed from Earth and photographed as it occurred. And, I got to thinking, Stuart, here we are, 5777, and the moon gets struck by a meteor, and I thought, wonder if there's some symbolism here, because the moon, as you well know, is a symbolic. It could be a satanic symbol also, but symbolically, the moon actually reflects the light of the sun, if you're speaking spiritually.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, is this a warning to the church itself?
Well, it could well be. Isaiah talks about the light of the sun increases sevenfold, which is a mini nova. The sun suddenly goes kind of berserk, and I was just reading an article where they say the sun is acting extremely anomalous right now, and the moon at that point gives us the light of the sun. Can you imagine the moon shining so bright that it looks like the sun in the sky? No. I mean, we can't hardly get our minds around that, but that's what it says. It's right there in Isaiah. And the sun is going to flare. In fact, it flares to the point where it says that men would die if the days were not shortened. Well, the only way you can shorten a stated amount, like you got your 1260, 1290, 1335 days that are listed, you can't shorten those because that's prophetic. That's not what he's talking about. We have, at this point, a 24-hour day. Something comes through that increases the rotation of the earth so that we have only one-third of that. So we have an 8-hour daylight and we have an 8-hour night, which would then prevent humanity from dying from the heat, but it would still scorch them. It's very, very interesting that we are looking at some cosmic events here that are beyond our ability to even comprehend them.
Well, one of the reasons I brought that up about the symbolism of possibly a meteor strike against the church. In other words, is that I know a pastor named Ian Taylor in the Philippines, and he has a son who for a number of years has had angelic visitations. And I got an email from him a few days ago from the Philippines.
Oh.
I didn't post it. I posted another one he sent me, but his son was visited by an angel, and the angel told him that the church was about to become under tremendous persecution on the earth, and I had given him a warning of that, and they sent me a copy of that. And then I woke up today, and the headlines on Drudge is that the moon got struck by a meteor, a massive meteor, and I thought, well, maybe symbolically that was a warning to the church of what that angel was telling Ian Taylor's son.
I think so. I think that you may remember the Jupiter strike, 21 meteor, or that was a comet that broke up into 21 pieces and struck Jupiter. There just so happens to be 21 impact events in the book of Revelation. Jupiter, in that case, probably represented the United States more than anything. And we're going to undergo the seal and trumpet and vial judgments, 21 of them. So it's not that the Lord hasn't laid down a lot of symbology and signs in the cosmic realm. He's done it here on earth with Israel. And people are just sound asleep. They don't believe any of this stuff when it's right in front of their faces. Did you see this new article by Louis Vega?
I don't know.
This is something people really need to know. Now, this is about the 923 star sign. And actually what it is a 7 luminary conjunction. Here's how it works. The moon, comet 67P, Jupiter, the sun, Mercury, Mars, and Venus. And this is kind of interesting because of comet 67P. When I first saw that, it takes you right back to the 67-day war, the 1967 Six-Day War. Well, the P would mean past, 67. He's pointing Israel back to the Six-Day War in 1967. So these things are not by accident. They're by design. And what's interesting, if you got 7, the middle one is the sun. I think we're being told something by all of this. You know, you couldn't just necessarily take this star sign that's upcoming unless you had a lot of confirmation to go with it. Now, here's a list. This is a short list, actually. The following is a list of the variables that makes the Revelation 12 star sign in 2017 unique. 1,260 days from the blood moon, on one of the blood moons on the tetrad, they say. It's 33 days from the Great American Eclipse of August 21, 2017. 50th Jubilee from 1967 and the liberation of Jerusalem. That's why Comet 67P is right there. I mean, the Lord is really working overtime to hit us over the head with 2x4s so we might wake up. It's the 120th year from the Zionist Congress. It's 120 Jubilee cycles since Genesis. In the conjunction of the 70th year anniversary of Israel's birth, convergence at end of Sabbath and Rosh Hashanah creation calendar, the conjunction of the moon, you were mentioning the moon, with comet 67P, the planetary alignment of Venus, Mars, Mercury to the Giza pyramids. That's kind of interesting because if you dig into Enoch and some of those other, how do you call them, extra biblical books, they claim it was Enoch who built those pyramids and probably the Sphinx. And I've done some research on that, and actually the interior of the Great Pyramid is exactly the walk of the Christian. And it's very amazing how all of that works together. Anyway, it starts with Venus, and was aligned to the Christ angle and the Great Pyramid, and I've seen that before. The retrograde of Jupiter's gestation within the womb, coinciding with the moon and the sun, and it's performing a menorah in the heavenlies, and there have been 24 Jupiter retrogrades since the crucifixion, a factor of 888. Now that's interesting because in the book Theomatics, guess what Jesus' number always comes out as? It's 888 or a factor of 888.
Wow.
As I said earlier, there are no coincidences, and God is the greatest of mathematicians. So you got all this stuff, and yet nobody's paying it. The gainsayers are out there in force.
Yeah.
And he says the sign does not occur actually on the Feast of Trumpets, but one day later. The birthing of Jupiter, which is the key factor, he claims occurs on September 9th. Well, I went into Stellarium, and I ran it, and although it could be September 9th, I think it's much more likely 9/11, which is not coincidental.
Wow.
And the typology of the rapture is not of the church believers, he claims. I'm not so sure about that. And then he argues about who the man-child is, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But how people can just ignore this is way beyond anything I can come up with. Because you can't have so many things dovetailing into this thing to it not mean anything. It definitely does. Getting off that, but maybe not getting off it, what's going on in Yellowstone? They say now they've had 1,100 earthquakes.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I don't know if you saw any of the damage of the roadways and such in Yellowstone region there in Montana or not, but Darnett showed me some images, unbelievable. I mean, just incredible. They had the 5.8, and of course, to preface all of this, you know, we all remember how Standeo and Hollydale had came out and told us that they had disconnected the public feeds of the seismographs of Yellowstone some time back, and how that we weren't being told anymore what was really happening in Yellowstone. We just had rumors to go on. And, of course, this one was a 5.8, or right out of 6, that occurred at, the epicenter was close to Lincoln, Montana, but it's in the Yellowstone Basin, and they say that they're very concerned now because of the frequency of the swarms and and a lot of it was running like 5.8 and down to 4s and 3s and 2s. It was a continuous aftershock, so to speak. And they were very concerned about that region of, I believe it was, they said Montana, Wyoming, and Utah, or maybe Idaho. I believe it's Idaho. That they were very concerned about, and of course some are more concerned with the West Coast, but the Dale website appears to be indicating that possibly Yellowstone has awakened, basically. Now, where this goes from here, I don't know. I posted today some of the earthquakes are running like 3.0s, 3.8, almost 4s, so it's still active, and like you said, hundreds in a short time, and it's ongoing. We're watching that closely, and at the same time, Stuart, what I find interesting is the fact that we're having 3s and almost 4s here in Oklahoma on a daily basis, along with the Montana earthquakes. It's happening in both places at the moment.
Well, it sounds like Noise, that ne'er-do-well, erstwhile Native American shaman lady, that some of these big places for volcanoes would awaken. And I guess they've got one over in Italy they're really concerned about. It is awakening over there by, where was it, Naples or somewhere in that area. They say that this thing could blow. What concerns me more than anything is the solar eclipse. It cuts right almost over Yellowstone, where you would have the sun, the moon, and the earth in total alignment. And maybe it's a conduit, if we actually, and I do believe them, that we live in an electrical universe. And that would kind of make kind of a conduit, I would think. Has James McKinney, I haven't followed him lately. Have you heard? Is he saying anything about any of this at all?
I haven't heard. He got really quiet along with John Moore and a few others after a lot of persecution came down and, a lot of trouble came down from the dark agencies, when they were sharing a lot of data about the destroyer and, the incoming and, or as they call Planet X, et cetera. And they pretty well shut down. I mean, as far as information, they almost, I'm trying to remember that friend of yours that wrote the book on earthquakes and all that data that was so good. He also got silent, remember?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he shut up Larry Parks. And he is the one who said that he knew where the, I guess you could call them underground lava movement areas, where it comes up from the Baja and goes all the way up north and then branches off. Part of it goes to Yellowstone, part of it goes to the Long Valley caldera, and that there was magma movement. He had an instrument that he had designed. Nobody really wanted to fool with it because it was so accurate. But that's typical, because they want to keep all this stuff quiet. Western Montana has just had a decent-sized earthquake. That's what they're calling it, just a decent-sized earthquake. That was a major earthquake for that area, wasn't it?
Yeah, they started out claiming it was a 6, but then they brought it. I've noted that a lot of these earthquakes, it's like one in the Philippines the same day that they had the 5.8, as they lowered it to a 5.8 from a 6 there in Yellowstone. They had a 7 in the Philippines, and they lowered that one to a 6.5. So they're busy. They're very busy, Stuart, at lowering the earthquake just enough where it doesn't seem to be a problem. Maybe it's something that's just a little unsettling, but we can live with it. That's the way they're dealing with all of this.
Yeah. I wanted to read some headlines here that deal with the paranormal, because that's always interesting to me anyway. Alabama City claims Bigfoot title. Strange sea creatures filmed in Alaska. Arizona man photographs a demon. Ghost janitor captured by a security camera in Arkansas high school. Colorado's Denver International Airport embraces its place in conspiracy lore. That's kind of an offshoot. Multiple residents in Connecticut see an undulating UFO. Georgia farmers concerned about calf mutilations or cattle mutilations. Have you heard any more? Do you get those things down there? I know Linda Moulton Hall did a huge research on these mutilations, and I really do believe they're kind of a deep state alien deal.
Yeah,
what do you think?
And it does. And the interesting thing is, they take parts, but also I've been called out to scenes when I was still in the business in sheriff's office work, to where we would find animals that were drained of blood. I mean, the cows, some of them calves, you'd find them, and even those that wasn't mutilated, their blood was gone. And so, it's very unique. And of course, this may tie in some way, with the search for blood and what blood can do and the research of the same, and may tie back into actually what Standale indicated was a human and a hybrid and alien base operations underground that went on. But this is still going on. I know you wrote a book, a fiction book. You said it's all fiction except what's real. And, you wrote, yes. I don't think that book ever really got out much, but it was very interesting because you had that in your book.
Yeah, that was Danny Dougal and the Lords of Mars. I'm going to reissue it. It was about a group of kids, and what happens is they're in the country, they're rural, but they're also interested in all kinds of strange events, as kind of Linda Moulton Howe was, and mutilations of cattle begin in the area, and it's baffling the sheriff's department. They can't figure out what's going on. Well, eventually the kids, against the orders of the sheriff, witness a UFO and aliens coming down and killing the cattle and draining their blood, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of an interesting book. It's called Danny Dougal and the Lords of Mars. I'm going to re-release that. It's really, it's based on everything that I have learned from people on the inside, and I just made it into a novel. It's kind of funny how that all works.
Well, what's interesting, too, is, Stuart, I read the MSS copy, of the book, and
yes.
I'll tell you what, it's a great, absolutely great kids' book. It's also great for us kids that are not totally too old yet. There's a lot of data. And I know you called it a fiction novel, except for the things in it that were real. And if people, maybe now is the time for that book, because a lot of people would find it very interesting, the data you've dealt with in that book and where that book takes people.
Yeah, because we dealt with the Underground Railway system, where these trains, and this is real, folks, whether you believe it or not, they've got trains underground that go about 2,000 miles an hour. They're electrogravity underground things. They're kind of like as far as I can figure out, they're kind of like a vacuum tube that you see at a bank. You put your money in that thing and it goes up. It's kind of friction-free. That's how they can get it to go so fast. And a lot of other stuff as well. The flying saucer mystery. It's really not a mystery. If people would read their Bible, they'd figure out right away what it is. And this backwards engineering that we're doing, this is all satanic stuff. It's part of the strong delusion. And mankind is kind of being duped into it. Anyway, Danny and the kids go to Mars. And they visit Tithonia, and they visit the pyramid complex that's on Mars. I got pictures of it. Remember when I released that Mars film, the real one?
I do.
About Tithonia? Yeah, that never went anywhere. But it's fascinating. That stuff is up there. It's real. We got the pictures. I don't know. Maybe people just don't want to believe it because it bothers their, their comfort zone. Here's one. Idaho, a woman crashes a car, and she claims it was Bigfoot that made her do it. So maybe Bigfoot's learning how to drive.
Wow.
So we got the mysterious flying. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Larry.
I was just going to mention, the last few months, Bigfoot's been big. Well, I mean, terminology-wise, for some time, but there seems to be more and more instances in the last few months. In the last month, the last 30 days, I've just absolutely received emails and stuff with data from all around the world of these things being seen and recognized, even some photographs. Garnett had some photographs the other day that appeared to be pretty accurate. And, of course, I told you, we talked about Hunting Apes in America, My Life as a Bigfoot Hunter by Jerry Heastan. And he's got some really incredible data, and the Area X in his book is right over my house. And I thought, wow, that's a little bit accurate. And so this is coming out of the woodwork, Stuart. all kind of anomalies, including the wolf man, upright walking wolves, and coyotes, and all kind of stuff, beginning to surface.
Well, I've got a book here. It's called The Beast of Bray Road, Wisconsin's Werewolf. And it's written by Linda S. Godfrey. And she goes into some of these weird sightings of Wolfman. And they are all over the place. I think they're shapeshifters. I think this is what's going on. People probably don't even believe in shapeshifters, but they really ought to. The Book of Enoch talks about how these beings took different forms when they arrived on planet Earth. They came down from the heavens. Remember what the Lord said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be. And this star sign, I think, is probably an arrival. Not necessarily on 9/23, but in and around that date. We will see an arrival, because remember, we have the two witnesses that are supposed to witness for 1,260 days. And that begins in the first half of the tribulation period. So if we have an arrival, we probably are going to see the two witnesses if we're still around. Maybe a lot of people won't be around. But anyway, here's another one, Bigfoot sighting on Eagle Cam in Michigan. Creepy ghost photographed by game camera in Mississippi. Now, that picture that you were talking about, that was taken by government agents, wasn't it, of Bigfoot?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, it was at a government cam.
Yep. So, folks, get ready for this kind of stuff. It's coming your way, whether you like it or not. All kinds of weird things are going on. Poltergeist activity filmed in a New Hampshire store. New Jersey town tormented by gangster turkeys. Now, you remember the movie The Birds, I think it was?
Yes.
Alfred Hitchcock?
Yeah.
Well, animals are beginning to act really, really strange. And I'm likening it to changes in the electromagnetic spectrum, like the bots talked about, and how it's affecting people. I mean, you got road rage, post office rage, airplane rage. You got all kinds of rages going on right now. Ghost dog, there's filmed in North Carolina. Let's see. Let's see if I can find one. Oh, here's a Pennsylvania man encounters a paranormal panther. That's a shapeshifter. In fact, in this Bray Road, they indicate it's a shapeshifter. Now, what was that place out there? Was it in California, the farm, the ranch, which had the portal?
I want to say Nevada or Arizona, I think it was.
And wasn't that a wolf that was not a wolf, and it changed its shape?
That's right.
So, folks, all I'm telling you is don't just pass it off as people that are idiots. There have been way, way, way too many people seeing this stuff. And most of them are very legitimate people. And, it's kind of hard to call them liars just because you don't happen to want to agree with them. Here's a headline. Astonishing rise in demand for exorcisms, putting mental health at risk, report finds. Why now? Why would we have such a thing as this at this point in time? Just as we're coming up on that star sign. What do you think?
Well, what's interesting also, Stuart, I don't know if you followed Russ Dizdar a little bit in his ministry, but, Russ Dizdar is one of the individuals that will sometimes do a deliverance work on some of the remote viewers that have got caught. In other words, their consciousness was out of their body, and when it came back, there was something there, is what they call it. And so it's a spirit. We know what it is.
Yes, right.
But anyway, Russ Dizdar says there's been a lot of activity recently. You know, remote viewing's on the rise also. They have classes everywhere. And you and I don't subscribe to that operation, but some of the data's correct. Now, Russ says there's been a big swing and upsurge in deliverance ministry needed for that type of people that are doing that activity. And also at the same time, and I'd like your opinion on this, he's claiming that he is seeing coming a spirit in the AI, which is artificial intelligence. You know, we're going to computer systems and cyberspace that uses AI, and he says there is a spirit behind AI that is going to be, well, it's probably part of the delusion, Stuart.
Well, you know, there's a fellow, and I never can remember his name, but anyway, he's done a lot of research, and he claims that Satan in material realm is not a carbon-based life form. He's a silicon-based life form. Well, what are your computers? They're silicon-based.
Yeah.
They have a spirit. Yeah, they do. In fact, I flew the Yes Group over here. They're from Great Britain. They disbanded soon after, but they were actually more popular than the Beatles when I flew them on their United States tour. And it was very, very interesting. One of their songs was called Machine Messiah.
Huh.
So, yeah, there is a spirit there. And, you know, a lot of people don't believe that demonics can attach themselves to different things. And I don't see any reason why they can't attach themselves through computers. In fact, aren't they talking about now with this 3D stuff, a DNA that they can modify and send through computers? DNA modifications?
Oh, absolutely.
What is he claiming is going to happen? That AI is actually going to, that would match the Golem prophecy. You know, how can we help you?
Exactly, and at the same time, Stuart, there's been some reports by Skywatch TV magazine that there is also research that say now that they can actually transport or teleport, I guess the terminology is probably teleportation, DNA from another dimension now through the silicon system of AI.
Yeah, I think they don't really realize what they're fooling with. Remember the movie? What was that movie that what was his name? He's a famous actor. You know, he played in Independence Day. I, Robot, where the robots became actually self-aware, kind of like Terminator series, where the computer became self-aware.
That's right.
And yeah, we're dealing in stuff we really shouldn't be tampering with. I think the Lord allows it to go only so far, and then he lowers the boom. That's far enough. And we are really right on the cusp of that activity. Even back in the Tower of Babel, remember the Lord came down and said, whatsoever they imagine to do, that can they do. We're a very dangerous species. Anyway, got any closing thoughts before we leave?
My mind's still circling around AI and what you were talking about. I'll tell you what, I just tell people to stay tuned. This is getting interesting.
Oh, yeah, folks, we are the most interesting period of time, I believe, in human history. And we're going to see things that are going to boggle the mind. And knowledge increases, just like Daniel the prophet said. But as we increase our knowledge, we appear to be getting dumber and dumber because of specialization. And that leads to total, I think, disaster. Anyway, we got 10 seconds left. Thanks a lot, Larry, for coming on board. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next week, everyone. Thanks for listening. Keep your heads up. Your redemption draweth nigh. Good night.